Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a quick top 5 video, but because it's spooky season, I want to kind of get into talking about some of the more classic monsters. So today we're going to do a top 5 favorite vampire list. So these are going to be my top 5 favorite vampires, but not all of them are going to necessarily come from different books. Some are going to come from movies and stuff like that. So yeah, please let me know in the comments down below, what are your top 5 favorite vampires from either books or movies or a combination of both? I would love to see your list down there as well. So yeah, with that being said, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and if you're interested in supporting the channel in another way, you can check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. So with that being said, let's begin. All right, so vampires. It is spooky season, and one of the classic monsters associated with spooky season, of course, is the vampire. And I've always liked vampires. Granted, werewolves are my absolute number one favorite supernatural creature, my main go-to. Well, it kind of ranges between werewolves and dragons. It's, one or the other. But either way, I really love those more particularly, but I do really love vampires. I was really obsessed with vampires as a kid, and I kind of want to go through my list of some of my favorite vampires. So, of course, like I already said, please leave your list in the comments down below. And let's go ahead and get started with my number 5. My number 5 favorite vampire has to be Alucard from Castlevania, the Netflix anime adaptation specifically. So I really, really like this Alucard. I think he's the coolest, badass, like anime version I've seen. He is like such a prodigious fighter, and he's got this great level of sarcasm and snark that just makes the character so much fun to watch. But ultimately, to me, he's kind of whiny. He's very much that classical, like ancient kind of vampire. But because his life is so dramatic and so tragic and stuff, he's just kind of a melodramatic whiner in a lot of ways. So like that's the best way I can describe him. Even though I really do love the character and I think all his action and stuff is really cool, but a lot of it is just him being very depressed. So even though he's one of my favorite, he's basically at the bottom of the list of my favorites. So that's why Alucard is my number 5th favorite vampire. So my 4th favorite vampire definitely has to be Victor from the Underworld series. So I absolutely love Victor. I think he's one of the coolest examples of like a medieval kind of vampire. And I think Bill Nighy did a great job portraying the character. He's so much fun, so vicious, so unforgiving, and just so absolutely inhuman. It is exactly one of the things about vampires that I love the most. Like they're a very inhuman kind of creature, even though they masquerade as humans. So I love when an adaptation or a version of a vampire really leans into that, so you can really see the humanity in him. You can tell the type of human he was, but you clearly can tell when he became a vampire, he embraced it like none other. So he's like, he has that core that he was a duplicitous human, but he is basically inhuman and has completely embraced his vampire nature. And I think the performance of it is just so much fun. He's so threatening. He's so like electric and like just magnetic to watch. So it's just so much fun and I love it a lot. So he's definitely my number 4 on my list. So, number 3 on my list, my third favorite vampire has to be Kurt Barlow, the main antagonist and the main vampire figure from Stephen King's Salem's Lot. So, even though this character barely has any real presence in the book and barely any presence in the original miniseries, because it's very much about the tension and the fear and the idea of this vampire existing, I think is one of my favorite because the way the idea of this vampire plays into the nature of the entire town, that is the main, well, one of the main subjects of the book. Like I think it just lends itself to this amazing level of atmosphere that is perfectly dipped in fall energy, as well as just like laced in this level of tension that is just very hard to shake. It is so well done. I love the way Stephen King wrote Salem's Lot, and I love the original 70s adaptation of it, the miniseries adaptation of it. And I think it's just done so well. Like the idea of a Boo Radley type of character, a shut-in who lives, in the big house in the neighborhood in the town and stuff, and like just the thought that he might be a vampire, and like all the workers that go into the house disappear, and like this kind of stuff. Like it just creates this permeable atmosphere that I just absolutely adore around this time of year, and I just love the character so much, even though there's not much to him. But he kind of opens the door to this entire other subsection of Stephen King creatures and like demonic type entities and stuff. And I just think it's so much fun. And again, it's mostly for me about the atmosphere that kind of permeates the entire story of Salem's Lot. And I give all that credit to Kurt Barlow. So yeah, that's why he's my third favorite vampire on the list. Definitely has to be Kurt Barlow from Stephen King's Salem's Lot. So let's go ahead and move on to number 2. My absolute second favorite vampire definitely has to be Lestat de Leoncourt. So I love Lestat. I think the book version of Lestat and this recent TV show version of Lestat are fairly different, but the core of the personality is the same. So I'm going to count them as one and the same. So I think Lestat is essentially the perfect culmination of everything that Dracula has been perceived to be over the years. Like over time, the image of Dracula and stuff has become more suave and more debonair and all this stuff. And the emphasis on his seduction and stuff has been made manifest in like a much larger way. So just this idea of what he has become over time, I think Lestat is basically all of that, like from core. Like he is disgustingly rich. He is like overly playful. He is very like flirtatious, but he is absolutely vicious. Like he can be completely vicious and like completely drop the entire human facade whenever he wants to. And he's just one of the fun, like most fun vampires out there because he's like one of the most indestructible vampires in fiction. And it's just funny because he's so over it. Like he's not like pressed about his level of immortality at all. He's just like, whatever. Like it's just he's very much the brat prince. And it's just so much fun to watch him like throughout the books. And then I love this adaptation that we're getting with the AMC show. Sam Reed does a great job as Lestat, and I think he has all the energy that we're kind of given hints at in the book and that we're shown in the book and stuff. But the actor is able to plus it to be even greater because what you're able to do with the visual medium as opposed to written form, and it's so well done. He's so much fun. He's so cool. He's so charismatic, and he's beautifully inhuman, and it's just like so well done. He's definitely my second favorite vampire of all time. The only reason my number one vampire is more high up on the list is because this vampire has had a greater influence on my life than Lestat has. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and go to number one. So before we get to our number one pick, I do want to talk about some honorable mentions. So I love different vampire versions all throughout media and stuff, but some of these didn't really make the list because they don't technically qualify. So like my first honorable mention, Acheron. Acheron from the Sherilyn Kenyon book Acheron and her entire Dark Hunter series. So Acheron lives as a Dark Hunter, which is essentially a vampire, but he's not. He's an Atlantean god, so he doesn't count as a vampire. But like in terms of people who masquerade as a vampire and stuff, I really enjoy the character. He's beautifully dramatic and incredibly sad, and just like has just the most dramatically sad backstory ever. But it kind of all culminates with him getting what he deserves. But even when he gets what he deserves, it's still just stress for 11,000 years because he just has to deal with all these underhanded, petty people forever. But some of them are really good. So yeah, but I really love the character, and like he's kind of got a tragic existence, but he's technically not a vampire. He's really a god, so he doesn't really count. Next honorable mention has to be David from the Lost Boys. Now, David is a traditional, or more or less traditional vampire. He is a total vampire, and I really love the character, but he didn't quite make this list. He will probably be on a top 10 list, but not a top 5 list. I love the movie The Lost Boys. It's one of my favorite movies I saw when I was young, and it was like perfectly around this time of year and everything. So, like, the seasonal feeling of fall and spooky season mixed with the movie that's like just spooky enough for young kids and stuff, it hit so perfectly for me. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite movies ever, and I probably will reevaluate that. Maybe David deserves a higher spot. I don't know, but currently he's an honorable mention. So my third and last honorable mention definitely has to be Klaus from Vampire Diaries. Now, Klaus is technically a hybrid. He is technically a werewolf and vampire, so he doesn't technically qualify as a just plain vampire, even though he spends the majority of his 1,000 plus year life as just a vampire. So he kind of could have squoze into the list, but I think of him more as a hybrid. Now, Joseph Morgan, who plays Klaus in the TV show, is a brilliant actor. I really don't think anybody could ever play that role besides him. I think the role is so solidified as his. Nobody else can touch it, like at all. It's so, so well done. He's so fun to watch. He's so threatening. He's so menacing, but he can also be very nice and kind and generous and stuff, and the performance of it is just so, so well done. I love the use of like their level of power, their being originals and stuff like that. It gives them this greater authority within the vampire community and stuff. And Klaus would just definitely wield that all kinds of willy nilly, and it's just so much fun. It's just so much fun to watch, and it's like a brilliant, well, not brilliantly done show. The show itself has a lot of flaws, but the character itself, I can barely give credit to the writing because it really feels like it's Joseph Morgan who just pulled all of that out of the writing and was able to create this character. And he just did such a phenomenal job. And I just love it so much. So he's definitely an honorable mention because he's not technically a vampire. Technically, he's a hybrid. So he doesn't really count as a vampire, but I definitely had to give him a mention on this. So yeah, definitely there. So that is my 3 honorable mentions, and let's go ahead to my number 1, my absolute favorite vampire of all time. So my number 1 favorite vampire, probably totally all, probably of all time, but more specifically for this list, my number 1 favorite vampire has to be Maximilian from Vampire in Brooklyn, played brilliantly by Eddie Murphy. So this is one of the adaptations that have always stuck with me. Not even adaptations. This is just one of all the vampire movies that have always stuck with me in my life because like people will try to say representation doesn't matter, but it has always mattered for me. Like I never really saw myself as a superhero character until I watched Justice League and saw John Stewart, especially considering he's from Detroit and I'm from Detroit and he was an architect and I went to school for architecture. So that character I related to just on a myriad of levels, apart from the fact I never went to the military and he's a Marine veteran, but like that's neither here nor there. But like that kind of level of representation like made me really get into the Green Lantern character and stuff. And same thing with Maximilian. So I've been obsessed with Dracula, or I was obsessed with Dracula as a kid for a very, very long time, mostly for the aesthetic. I really like the fangs and stuff, but I love a cape. Like I absolutely love a cape. Like I went on Halloween as Darth Vader for years because of the cape, but I wanted to be Dracula, but I didn't want to be like Dracula. Like there was no Dracula version for me. That was basically how I saw it. So I knew James Earl Jones was Darth Vader, so I always was Darth Vader because of the cape. And then I saw Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy and saw this brilliant, suave, hilarious, evil, kind of crazy, just goofy as all get out vampire that Eddie Murphy played. And I was like, yes, that's me. Like I'm Maximilian. I thought it was just brilliant to get to see this black vampire that wasn't like Blackula, which is basically a little more than a spoof of Dracula. He's just like I can't remember what it was. He was like a king or something, and like the origin of it is fairly interesting, but it's very much just a black version of Dracula. I really love Vampire in Brooklyn because it's a completely new kind of character and it's a completely new scenario and it's very much in the vein of like werewolf, American Werewolf in London, where he has like a ghoul that's falling apart and stuff, just like the guy does in that movie. And it's a Wes Craven movie, so it's like it's got this kind of contemporary '90s kind of core of comedy through it, the same way he did with Scream and stuff like Wishmaster and stuff like that. And I just think it's done so well. I absolutely adore the character, and I love Eddie Murphy's performance where he does all the dressing up as different characters and stuff and getting all goofy with the other characters and stuff. I just love that stuff so much. It's so hilarious. It's stuck with me forever because of the level of representation it provided me, and it gave me an excuse to wear a cape for like 9 Halloweens or something like that. Like it was insane. Like I basically same costume, same character every year for the longest time, and it's mostly an excuse to wear a cape. But I absolutely adore the character. I love Eddie Murphy's performance, and it's just one of my absolute favorite vampires, like in all fiction. So that's my list of my top 5 favorite vampires. Not of all time, but my current top 5 vampires. So yeah, please let me know in the comments down below. What is your top 5 list? Who are your 5 favorite vampires from either fiction or from either books or movies or both? A combination of both. Yeah, just let me know your list down below. I really love to know who are some of your favorite vampires. And as always, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're interested, please check out my Patreon. You can definitely support the channel in that way also. And with that being said, I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.